On that suffocating August night in 2021, Oscar Naranjo had no idea he would witness the greatest environmental scandal in world history. In his 35-year career, he had fought every kind of criminal from Pablo Escobar to FARC guerrillas, from international drug traffickers to terror financiers. But the truth he would discover that night would overshadow all these experiences. Because what he would learn that night was that the Amazon rainforests, known as the lungs of the world, were being systematically destroyed by the boundless greed of 6 oil giants. Dear viewers, the story I will share with you today will completely change how you understand world politics and environmental history. The phone you hold in your hand, the gasoline you use, the electricity in your home, behind all of this lies a truth you could never imagine. This truth is so shocking that you'll want to stop watching and turn it off. But please don't, because every piece of information you'll learn is critically important for understanding the future of not just the Amazon, but the entire planet. This story also reveals how powerful a manipulation tool the media can be. Because the truths Oscar Naranjo discovered will expose the horrific reality behind the news you see on television screens, in newspapers, and on social media for years. The environmental news you watch every day might actually be propaganda materials prepared to cover up the truths these giant corporations want to hide from you. The events I will tell you about are not limited to just the Amazon rainforests. This system is being applied in forest areas around the world, in natural habitats, and on lands where indigenous peoples live. What Oscar Naranjo discovered was just one part of a globally organized nature massacre. Currently, this story contains the horrific truths that powerful corporations with billions of dollars in interests have hidden from you. The names of these corporations are companies whose advertisements you see on television, whose products you even use in your daily life. But their true face is much darker than you ever thought. The hero of this story, Oscar Naranjo, is not just a police officer. He is humanity's conscience. He is a warrior who fought injustice for 35 years, stood against the most powerful criminal organizations, and never gave up. And that night, the situation he encountered through a chain of coincidences would be the greatest test of his life. The secret base on the outskirts of Leticia City looked like a normal environmental research center from the outside. With its white walls, modern glass facades, and the "We Protect Nature" sign at the entrance, it appeared completely innocent. But Oscar Naranjo's 35 years of experience had taught him that the biggest secrets could be hidden behind the most innocent-looking places. In the late hours of that night, representatives of 6 petrochemical giants would hold a meeting in this center's conference hall that would determine the fate of not just the Amazon, but all of humanity. Only 7 people in the world would be aware of this meeting's existence. And of these 7 people, only Oscar Naranjo would have the deadly courage to announce what he learned to the world. These 6 companies had, not coincidentally, carried out the largest and most strategic oil extraction projects in the Amazon basin over the past 5 years. Secret oil fields in Colombia, giant reserves in Brazil, untouched wells in Peru, golden underground riches in Ecuador. These projects, which millions of people thought were being done for clean energy needs and economic development, hid a horrific truth that no one could imagine. The names of these companies are probably names you know very well. Companies that constantly give green messages in television advertisements, known for their sustainable future slogans, winners of environmental awards. But what Oscar Naranjo would hear that night would ruthlessly expose the real face behind all this green mask. Before that night, Oscar Naranjo had come to the Amazon region only for routine environmental security consulting. In the past 3 months, the number of forest fires in the region had increased horrifically. Satellite images showed thousands of hectares of forest area burning in flames every day. The world media presented this as the inevitable consequence of climate change. But Naranjo's deep experience whispered something different to him. Naranjo's arrival in the Amazon was actually not entirely coincidental. He himself had been conducting volunteer work in environmental protection for many years. Even during the years he fought Pablo Escobar, he worked with indigenous tribes in the Amazon in his spare time, trying to protect their rights. Therefore, he was one of the first to notice the unusual developments in the Amazon region. Another detail that caught Naranjo's attention was different. In the past 6 months, 12 environmental activists working in the Amazon had mysteriously disappeared. In official records, these were listed as accidents during nature walks. But Naranjo's police experience told him that so many coincidences were impossible. Someone was silencing these activists. As someone who had fought the most complex criminal organizations for 35 years, he never believed in the concept of coincidence. And the fact that the fires in the Amazon were breaking out so regularly, in such strategic locations, set off all his alarm bells. When he arrived in Leticia, the atmosphere was truly suffocating. The local population was in panic. Children couldn't breathe in the thick smoke. Elders whispered tearfully, "The forest doesn't die like this, someone is killing it." This scene broke Naranjo's heart into pieces. On his first day there, Naranjo had the opportunity to speak with local tribal leader Carlos Yagua. Carlos was a wise 67-year-old man who was born and raised in the Amazon. "Brother Oscar," Carlos said, "I've known these lands for 67 years. Forest fires were never like this. These are not natural. We hear helicopter sounds during the nights, but no firefighting teams come in the morning. Someone is deliberately burning our forest." These words deeply affected Naranjo. because he could trust the observations of someone like Carlos who had lived in the Amazon for years. That night, in light of the information Carlos provided, he began observing the environment, and indeed, he could hear helicopter sounds from a distance during the night hours. The next morning, Naranjo visited one of the fire zones. What he saw there gave him his first clues. The fire was concentrated exactly in the areas where oil reserves were located, and around the fire areas, abnormally clean and organized roads had been opened. These roads seemed to be made for the passage of heavy machinery, but the mysterious force called coincidence made him the sole witness to perhaps the greatest ecological crime in world history. And this coincidence led him to learn the horrific truth about the $12 billion worth of natural resources systematically stolen from the Amazon's 50 million hectares. At exactly 22:45, when his own meeting ended earlier than expected, Naranjo wanted to go up to the upper floor of the building to look at the Amazon's magical night view. But while walking in the corridor, sounds seeping from a half-open door caught all his attention. The first number he heard was $12 billion. Then the words forest clearing operation, indigenous tribe problem, and global environmental cover-up rang in his ears. His 35-year police instinct screamed to him that this was definitely not a normal environmental meeting. When he quietly approached the door, the company names being discussed inside literally shocked him. Representatives of oil giants known worldwide for their environmentally friendly advertisements were describing in detail how they divided the natural riches in the Amazon basin among themselves. Naranjo understood at that critical moment that he had a historic opportunity in his hands. With trembling hands, he opened the voice recording app on his phone. From that moment on, he would witness one of the greatest ecological crimes in Amazon history and perhaps world history. For the next 4 hours and 20 minutes, representatives of 6 different oil giants would describe one by one how they stole natural resources in the Amazon and what inhumane methods they used. The meeting's moderator, who owned North America's largest petrochemical holding, began the meeting with these chilling words. "Dear partners, the Amazon is not just a forest for us. This is the world's largest natural bank, harboring 45 billion barrels of oil in the depths of the earth, and the time has come to empty this bank." Hearing these words, Naranjo almost dropped his phone in amazement. 45 billion barrels of oil, the existence of this enormous reserve had been deliberately hidden from world public opinion. The moderator continued his horrific speech. As you know, 150 indigenous tribes living in the Amazon claim to have thousand-year-old legal rights over these lands. But with the effective methods we've developed over the past 4 years, we've largely overcome this obstacle. Naturally polluting water sources, spreading epidemic diseases, and causing accidental fires, all have given much more effective results than expected. These words froze Naranjo's blood, because the moderator was describing the systematic extermination of 150 different tribes as if he were talking about the weather. In the following hours, how these 6 companies had stolen billions of dollars worth of resources from 12 different strategic regions in the Amazon basin over the past 4 years was described one by one. The same diabolical system had been used for each region. The most disturbing aspect of this system was how detailed it had been planned. Separate files had been prepared for each tribe. The weaknesses of tribal leaders had been identified, and this information was used to manipulate the tribes. One of the most striking details discussed at the meeting was the fire protocol. Thanks to this protocol, deliberate forest fires were started in areas where they wanted to extract resources. After the fire, the damaged area was seized under the name of a rehabilitation project. One of the most shocking examples described at the meeting was the case of the Tikuna tribe on the Colombian border in 2020. This tribe of 180 people posed a threat because of the oil reserves under their lands. The companies had first caused the deaths of 34 people by poisoning their water sources. The details of this operation were openly described at the meeting. A representative said, "In the Tikuna operation, we first approached the tribal leader. We promised modern education and healthcare for his children. The man trusted us and let us into their lands. Then, under the name of water quality tests, we mixed industrial waste into their water. Within 2 months, children started getting sick. When the tribal leader asked us for help, we said this place is no longer livable due to environmental pollution and moved them to other places." Naranjo was trembling as he listened to these details. Because this was not just a commercial operation. This was a crime against humanity committed by abusing the trust of the most innocent people. And the most horrific part was that this system had been applied to dozens of different tribes. The meeting also described water poisoning techniques in detail. The companies were mixing various chemicals into the water sources of indigenous tribes. These chemicals appeared harmless initially but caused serious health problems after 2 to 3 months. Thus, the tribes were forced to migrate on their own. Another system discussed at the meeting was environmental organization manipulation. These companies also made significant donations to leading environmental organizations. We make annual donations totaling $85 million to 23 major environmental organizations worldwide. In return, they don't criticize our operations in the Amazon, it was said. Another representative spoke about media strategy. We work with a total of 420 journalists and editors in 67 countries. We pay them a total of $25 million annually. The dimensions of this media manipulation were truly surprising. The representative continued. After every major fire news, our media network kicks in. Explanations like climate change, drought, natural causes are made. People never learn the real reason. Some journalists even praise our firefighting efforts. The most insidious part was the fake scientific reports. We give $8 million annually in research funds to 15 universities. Scientists at these universities publish reports saying that oil extraction operations in the Amazon cause minimal environmental damage. People trust science, we use this trust. They spent millions of dollars every year making television commercials, showing themselves as environmentally friendly. People see our employees planting trees and protecting animals in our commercials. But at the same time, we clear 500 hectares of area daily in the Amazon, they explained. Oscar Naranjo could no longer believe what he was hearing in the third hour of the meeting. Because this was no longer just resource theft. This was a full-scale assault on the planet's future. One of the most technical topics discussed at the meeting was carbon credit manipulation methods. These companies were producing fake carbon credit projects while destroying forests on one hand. The topic discussed in the last hour of the meeting was the 10-year future plan. Among the discussed projects were an $8 billion energy corridor in Colombia, a $12 billion mining complex in Brazil, and a $7 billion petrochemical center in Peru. The meeting's moderator concluded with these words: "Gentlemen, we are not just energy companies, we are the forces that shape the future. Trees come and go, but the resources we extract will create value for centuries." When the meeting ended at 03:15, Naranjo had obtained a 4-hour and 20-minute recording. This was irrefutable evidence of one of the greatest ecological crimes in world history. The next day, when Naranjo left Leticia, he knew his life would completely change, because the recordings in his hands would expose not only 6 companies but also hundreds of politicians who collaborated with them. For the first few months, Naranjo kept the recordings in a safe place and thought about what to do. During this period of indecision, he listened to the recordings repeatedly and discovered new horrific details with each listening. After 6 months, Naranjo finally made his decision. He would share these recordings with the world. As a first step, he sent copies of the recordings to reliable environmental journalists in different countries. When Naranjo published the recordings, they had an earthquake effect worldwide. Within 24 hours, the stocks of the 6 companies experienced historic declines. The 8 countries in the Amazon basin declared a state of emergency. Hundreds of environmental activists took to the streets. But the most important change occurred in the consciousness level of world public opinion. Millions of people learned the truth for the first time. They understood the real reason for Amazon fires and why indigenous peoples were disappearing. Of course, Naranjo also paid great prices during this process. The first death threat came just 48 hours after the recordings were published. The first physical attack occurred 72 hours later. 3 black-windowed cars parked in front of Naranjo's house in Bogotá. After these attacks, Naranjo had to increase security measures. He formed a security team consisting of former colleagues, because not only himself but also the journalists who published the recordings were being threatened. The attack on German journalist Klaus Weber, who first published the recordings, deeply shook Naranjo. Weber was found dead in his home in Berlin. Although the official explanation was heart attack, Weber was only 34 years old and had no health problems. Naranjo knew Weber's death was no coincidence. After this incident, Naranjo began worrying about the safety of other journalists. He taught them encrypted communication methods and arranged meetings in safe houses. Because this was no longer just environmental news. This was a struggle for survival. The second wave of attacks was more insidious. Naranjo's past began to be scrutinized thoroughly. Every case, every decision in his 35-year police career was put under a microscope. News stories were published with fake documents claiming he had committed corruption in the past. But these news stories were so amateurishly prepared that no one believed them. The third wave of attacks targeted his family. His son Diego was fired from his job. His daughter Isabella's university scholarship was terminated. His wife Maria was dismissed from the school where she worked. After 4 months, legal attacks began. A case was filed with the International Environmental Court, and Naranjo began to be tried on charges of trade secret violation. The court process lasted 14 months. When the court concluded, Naranjo was acquitted. But more importantly, he gained world public support during the court process. Millions of environmental lovers worldwide embraced his struggle. After Naranjo's revelation, similar cases began to emerge in many countries. The European Union issued a global environmental transparency directive. While some senior executives in America were forced to resign, the 6 companies began following different strategies. The first company, Petro Global, announced that it had stopped all its activities in the Amazon. The second company, Eco Energy, took an aggressive stance. The third company, Global Oil, increased pressure on Naranjo's family. After 6 months, Naranjo dropped his second bomb. He also had photographs he had secretly taken during the meeting. When these photographs were published, a second wave of protests began worldwide. These photographs were much more effective than the audio recordings, because now people could see the faces of these companies' executives. They could understand how these men, who talked about environmental love in television commercials, spoke in secret meetings. The most striking of the photographs was the image of the 6 companies' CEOs drawing lines on an Amazon map. On the map, areas to be destroyed were marked in red, areas to be preserved in green, and the red areas were much larger than the green areas. After these images were published, the company's stocks collapsed for the second time. because they could no longer deny it. The photographs also confirmed the authenticity of the audio recordings. Particularly, the photograph of PetroGlobal's CEO Marcus Steinberg had a great impact. Steinberg constantly said, "We protect the Amazon" on live television broadcasts. But in the photograph, he was pointing to, "We will clear this area in 2025, written on the Amazon map, and smiling. The biggest blow came from Brazil. President Luis Mendoza canceled the licenses of all foreign oil companies in the Amazon based on Naranjo's recordings. This decision cost the 6 companies a total of $28 billion. Naranjo's last trump card was documents about the 6 companies' offshore accounts. These documents showed the $180 billion that the companies had evaded in taxes over the past 7 years. When the documents were published, simultaneous operations began worldwide within 72 hours. The FBI in America, Scotland Yard in England, BND in Germany, all intelligence services took action. The first arrest took place in Switzerland. PetroGlobal's CEO Marcus Steinberg was detained. The second arrest was made in Singapore. Eco Energy's Asia director Chen Wei was arrested. On the 15th day, Rise Up for Amazon actions began worldwide. Simultaneous protests were held in 85 cities. 3.2 million people took to the streets. The most impressive aspect of these protests was that not only environmental activists but also ordinary citizens participated. 280,000 in London, 95,000 in Paris, 150,000 in Tokyo protested. These numbers showed that a consciousness change was taking place worldwide regarding the environment. The most attention-grabbing banners in the protests were Naranjo's photographs and writings saying, "Those who tell the truth are heroes." People saw Naranjo not just as a whistleblower, but as a real hero. An interesting development occurred during the protests. Employees of the 6 companies also began participating in the protests. They too were shocked when they learned the true face of their companies. 23 engineers from PetroGlobal resigned en masse. Environmental department employees of Eco Energy protested their company's real activities. These internal rebellions put the companies in a much more difficult position, because they were now facing not external criticism, but the rebellion of their own employees. The same day, a critical decision came from Europe. The European Union banned all activities of the 6 companies in Europe. This ban cost the companies $95 billion annually. But the real blow came from China. The Chinese government canceled all energy agreements with the 6 companies. This cancellation meant the collapse of $340 billion worth of agreements. On the 20th day, the final move came. The nuclear waste plan document in Naranjo's possession was published. According to this document, the 6 companies had built nuclear waste storage facilities in the depths of the Amazon. This document completely infuriated the international community. The UN Security Council convened urgently and issued an international arrest warrant for the 6 companies. As a result, Naranjo's 8-month struggle ended with a historic victory. The 6 companies completely collapsed. Their executives were arrested. All operations in the Amazon were stopped. But most importantly, environmental consciousness changed permanently worldwide. After this victory, Naranjo's story became the subject of books, documentaries, and films worldwide. Leading Hollywood directors wanted to bring his story to the big screen. But Naranjo rejected all these offers. "My goal is not to become famous, but to protect the Amazon," he said. Naranjo's struggle also gave birth to a new environmental protection model. In this system called the Naranjo model, people who report environmental violations are legally protected and rewarded. 47 countries adopted this model. Additionally, under Naranjo's leadership, a global environmental whistleblowing network was established. Thanks to this network, environmental violations anywhere in the world can be immediately announced to world public opinion. No company can now conduct secret environmental massacres. Today, Naranjo continues to live in the Amazon and continues his environmental protection work. He is no longer just a retired police officer. He has become the symbolic name of the worldwide environmental protection movement. His courage inspires millions of people. This story is not just Oscar Naranjo's heroism story. This shows the power each of us possesses. Because real change comes from ordinary people who have the courage to tell the truth. And Oscar Naranjo was just such an ordinary but brave person. Naranjo's struggle also showed how powerful media manipulation can be in the modern world. For years, people thought the environmental news they saw on television screens was real. But the reality was much darker. The most important lesson to be drawn from this story is this: we should never blindly believe everything we see. We should always ask questions, research, and seek the truth. Because sometimes the truth comes to light from the most unexpected places, through the courage of the most ordinary people. Oscar Naranjo's story continues today. He continues to live in the Amazon rainforests and continues his environmental protection work. His struggle was just the beginning of the Great War waged to leave a more livable world for future generations. And perhaps most importantly, Naranjo's story shows us this: one person's courage can change even the world's most powerful companies. Because real power is not in money or technology, but in the determination to defend what is right.